Hello, Mark from Soundmasters here, and today I'm reviewing a phono preamp that is a moving coil phono preamp that promises to deliver a practical noise floor lower than that of even the very best moving magnet phono cartridges out on the market. Given the really absurdly low output, of course, of moving coil cartridges, this sounds like a pretty bold claim. Can the MC Pro by Michael Fidler's classic audio company deliver the goods? Let's find out. When I reviewed the Spartan 15 by the same company a few months ago, I was really impressed, but I'm very keen to see what Michael Fidler's first step into the world of moving coil cartridges might bring. As is the case with all Michael Fidler designs, it's all through-hole circuitry here, no surface mount technology at all, so this makes it a refreshingly old-school approach, and they're hand-soldered right here in the UK. Pop the lid on one of these things as well, and you'll notice that the circuit boards are immaculately laid out, and it really is kind of a work of art. One other standout feature is the decision to use linear power supplies instead of the cheaper switching variety that most other manufacturers are using. So while these are cheaper and perhaps more power efficient, they can be plagued with pesky electromagnetic interference, and we don't want that getting into our audio. Now, granted, the Michael Fidler designs are not going to win any beauty contests when it comes to the external housing, but they're incredibly well built. I particularly like the reassuring clunk of the toggle switches on the front, which really feel like they'll last a lifetime compared to the cheaper push-button type varieties that you see on many other phono preamps. And by the way, according to the website, these are rated for 50,000 cycles, as opposed to the 10,000 cycles of those cheaper push-button varieties. There are 4 of these toggles on the front panel. The first one controls power, another one controls the gain, and then there's 2 lesser spotted features in the mono switch, but also a fully defeatable low-frequency crossfeed that also has a sturdy aluminium knob for controlling the turnover frequency next to this. More on what this feature does later on in the review. Flip the MC Pro over and you'll notice the usual RCA inputs and outputs, but you'll also see these XLR balanced outputs. This gives the unit greater flexibility in terms of the cable run distance that you can run. Assuming that your next point in the signal chain has balanced inputs, you can run longer distances here without having to worry about interference getting into the signal chain. But why no balanced input, you might ask? It's got a balanced output, why not put a balanced input as well? Well, the designer Michael goes into great detail on his YouTube channel as to why in the instance of phono preamps, he doesn't believe that balanced inputs are a net benefit. He cites mostly the additional amplifier stage required for each channel. So you need 2 amplifiers for each channel, left and right in this case. So by adding that, it adds additional noise. So it's not necessarily, in his view, a net benefit, and that instead we should advocate keeping cable lengths short, both in terms of the tone arm and the distance between the turntable and the phono preamp. So in this case, we are not seeing a balanced input, and that's his design decision. I see some logic in this, particularly given that with phono signals, we're amplifying such tiny little signals to begin with, so the potential for noise is quite high. So I see the logic. Remember at the beginning of this video when I said we're promised lower noise floor than even the best moving magnet designs? Well, this does sound like a very tall order given the very low output of moving coil cartridges, but there is science behind the madness, so to speak. If we look at moving coil designs, they can indeed have a better signal to noise ratio thanks to their lower coil resistance that produces 25 times less thermal noise voltage. The catch is this better signal to noise ratio assumes that the receiving amplifier is capable of boosting the signal without nullifying this inherent moving coil benefit. Michael's answer to this is to use discrete parallel transistors on the input amplifier in place of integrated circuit op-amps. He claims that this is what is responsible essentially for achieving the MC Pro's better signal to noise ratio than even the best moving magnet phono preamps. The benefit to you is exceptionally black backgrounds along with all the inherent benefits of the lower inertia of moving coil phono cartridges. A quick look at the specifications reveals a claimed signal-to-noise ratio of 81.5 dB between 220 Hz and 22 kHz. That sounds pretty impressive. But specifications can be quite misleading, and in the absence of any fancy testing equipment to confirm any of this, I like to go on what I can actually hear. So to get a sense of the general background noise compared to the competition, I took two other phono preamps of a similar price point and performed a little test. I took the Hi-Fi News Test LP to get a sample of some pink noise that allowed me to normalize the recordings of each one of these phono preamps to get an idea of which one sounds quietest with a cartridge load attached. Here's the results. The results, I think, speak for themselves, and I did crank the volume just to make the point here, but it is also worth keeping in mind that both of these other phono preamps were combination moving magnet and moving coil designs, whereas the MC Pro, of course, is moving coil only. This has some benefits, according to Michael over at his website. He says that by taking the dedicated MC approach simplified above, the MC Pro drops the moving magnet capability in favour of amplifying the moving coil input almost 10 times more than the combination circuit. So the stronger signal is now far less prone to noise contamination from the next stage. If you want to learn more about this, you can check out the link in the description of this video. Low noise is all well and good, but what about the MC Pro's ability to handle large dynamic swings? Well, looking at the specifications, there's some good statistics to show that it may well be able to handle pretty much anything I can throw it at here. The maximum inputs taken at 1K and 10K and then measured across 63 dB or 73 dB of gain show a figure here. Let's just take one example. We've got 7.3 millivolts RMS at 63 dB of gain at 1K, and at 10K that is 35 millivolts RMS at 63. It drops slightly when you're in the 73 dB of gain mode, of course, but given the nominal output of my Quintet Red cartridge of 0.5 millivolts, it's pretty safe to say that it should be able to handle pretty much anything I can throw at it recorded material-wise. If the statistics are to be believed, then the harmonic distortion is essentially negligible at 0.0005% across 20 Hz to 22 kHz at 21 volts RMS. So far so good, but what is the purpose of a phono preamp if not to adhere to that RIAA equalization curve as closely as possible? And once again, there's some impressive stats. Similarly to the Spartan 15, we're shown a give or take figure of 0.1 dB between 40 Hz and 22 kHz. That's remarkably impressive considering that a lot of phono preamps struggle to get around 0.5 dB give or take to that curve. If all of this sounds too good to be true in terms of the specifications I've reeled off so far, I do recommend checking out the measurements taken by audiosciencereviews.com. I'll put a link in the description. It appears to basically back everything up. But what about that curious low frequency crossfeed feature? Well, this has to do with noise once again, but it's well known that a lot of the noise of vinyl playback is located in the low frequencies. We're familiar with that kind of roar and that road noise of playing a vinyl record, and it's well known that a lot of surface noise actually gets cancelled out when you flick a mono switch on, and it essentially cancels out that vertical movement and we get a reduction in noise. But of course we don't want to lose the stereo width of our recordings. We don't want to be listening to stereo records with the mono switch enabled. That's just not something we're going to want to do. So what if we could preserve that stereo width but still get rid of a lot of this low frequency noise? Well, this is exactly where the low frequency crossfeed comes in. The theory is that bass frequencies are largely panned to mono when mastering for vinyl, so no useful information is lost when blending to mono below 200 Hz or lower. This is true to a degree. Stereo bass can result in big sweeping movements up and down, and if left unchecked can cause serious problems in the cutting process, let alone the playback process. So by test cutting and watching how the cutting lathe reacts during these test runs, the engineer can determine how much, if any, correction is needed to control that vertical movement. As a simple test to show how the low frequency crossfeed can reduce a lot of that vinyl raw, I took my trusty Hi-Fi News test LP, recorded an unmodulated groove, and you'll hear in these samples just now how when it's enabled, you hear a significant reduction in that road noise of a record. When applied with actual music, you will find, particularly on headphones, that a lot of bass detail is revealed that might otherwise be lost in some of that surface noise when you're using that low frequency crossfeed feature. The last feature I will touch on before we go to the sonic performance of the MC Pro is the Subsonic Filter. This is an always on subsonic filter, and it manages to get rid of all that unwanted low frequency junk without interfering with the frequency curve. We want to get rid of this because, it can be very damaging to our speakers, and not to mention that it can take away a great deal of headroom from the actual sonic performance as well. But the secret apparently to this is using hand selected capacitors. This is such an engineer led product, and for those who really want to delve into the technical detail, there'll be a link in the description of this video that you can check out in your own time. But now it's time to sum up the actual sonic performance of the MC Pro. When all is said and done, the MC Pro is the quietest, most transparent phono preamp I've personally heard. There is no overriding sound signature, other than it simply gets out of the way, allowing you to hear the music precisely as it was intended. If anything, you're hearing more accurately the sonic characteristics of your cartridge, which is exactly the sense I got when reviewing the Spartan 15. The MC Pro is lively, dynamic, and a real treat to the ears. In many of my other phono preamp reviews, and I've reviewed quite a few of them of late, I've used some fluffy language to describe the sound. But given how transparent this thing sounds, this type of explanation feels inconsequential. Instead, it makes more sense to highlight the MC Pro's exceptional light and shade, thanks to the inherent lack of self-noise. This is enhanced further still by the low frequency crossfeed, which only serves to remove even more of that distracting noise that might otherwise obscure the more subtle details and the finesse of the very best recordings. Reverb tails and recording spaces overall become clearer and overall easier to distinguish. Lower frequencies are more evidently refined than the competition I've heard, and while some purists might argue the toss over whether summing a portion of the low end to mono should be done at all, the benefit of reduced mechanical and surface noise is undeniable to my ears. It's the quiet passages of music that really benefit the most, but equally, with such incredible headroom, louder passages and very dynamic recordings are also allowed to raise the roof, so to speak, in the most incredible way. I've spent just over a month with the MC Pro now, and I have to say I will struggle to let this one go. It's really that good. There are so many other details that I haven't fully covered in this review for the sake of brevity, which includes the immensely useful mono switch. Sadly, this is missing from most phono preamps these days, and if you play any amount of older mono records and you don't own a true mono cartridge, you'll notice a significant cancellation of surface noise with this feature enabled. Just as I did when reviewing the Spartan 15, of course. The MC Pro deserves a more beautiful housing. That much is undeniable, and I really don't think that Michael Fidler himself would refute this either. Perhaps as the company continues to grow, this may come in good time. But for now though, his priorities, I would say, are exactly in the right place. That concludes the review. Pop your questions and comments in the comment section as always, and if you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. I would love to have you on board, but until that next video, do enjoy the music and keep spinning.